Hey, okay, so this is a TVT between Rob and Gosu Noob, and openings aside, like for the first 15 minutes of the game, you do everything right and you get a really big lead. And then it feels like you don't know what to do after that first 10 or 15 minutes. Um, the idea of TVT, right? In the opening, you're trying to win with positioning and medevacs and sniping his third, or doing huge economic damage, or doing a doom drop that catches him at the top of his ramp so that he can't defend. Or you're trying to win. But if you don't, you can still win a mid to late game TVT because we're going for a really economic play. So most of our TVTs will go long, but we'll be very happy if they don't. Anyway. So I don't really see you in this game trying to win with your first 4 medevacs the way I'd like you to. And then I do sort of see you overstepping along the ground at least twice, maybe more often, where you just don't have to. So the idea is that with Stim and medevacs, infantry can get away from anything except for more infantry. So if you have made 0 tanks and you've been upgrading your infantry and you know you've spent every penny you have and you know that you're doing economically at least as well as your opponent, then you can just be confident in your mind that there's no way you're going to lose an infantry battle. So if you take all of your infantry and you walk it around, the only way he can kill it is with tanks, and you don't have to fight tanks because they have to be sieged in order to be good, so you can just walk away. So it gives you map control to know that you're never going to lose a fight, because if he has tanks, you can just walk away. And what map control means in all 3 matchups, just the term map control, means that you can expand anywhere you want and he can't punish you, and it means that he can't expand anywhere unless he does like a slow crawling tank push to it, right? But the way that you enforce your map control is by holding both watchtowers and having your army in a position right next to his base, so that if he takes his whole army and walks out of his base, you could theoretically kill his whole base. Or if he takes part of his army and walks out of his base, you get to kill that part of his army because it's not his whole army. So he's basically stuck inside of his base and he can't expand, and you get to expand, and he can't stop your expansions because he can't get out of his base. You never do that here. You get to this point, like right now, for example, you have an army that's stronger than his by a lot. But you never get any vision of the map, you never go to his side of the field, and he never feels like he can't leave his base. From his perspective, your army is hiding inside your base, so he doesn't feel threatened at all by your army. And even if he knows that your army is bigger, which I'm not sure that he does, it doesn't matter to him. He makes this bait, he immediately floats it over here and takes this third, and you don't even see it, let alone try to stop it. And what's the point of getting this huge early game advantage if you're not going to use it to deny his third, So until your first 4 medevacs come out, you're not really going to have as much of an advantage as you want to. So it is good that you're waiting a little bit. But once these medevacs pop, I want you to walk over there and kill his third. This turret is... I don't know. These 2 turrets do kind of give you the protection along the south, which is what you want turrets to do. But it's a silly position because he can unload a drop like right here and get 4 Marines out without losing the medevac. Like, the turrets should be up against the wall, so there should be a turret here and a turret here instead of a turret here and here. If you keep them far away like this, then he can unload some of his drop before he loses the medevacs, whereas if you put him right up on the edge, then he can't do drops. So you kind of made a turret ring that just gives him permission to unload, especially here or here. Not only that, putting this turret here is very silly. Maybe... I would say a turret here and a turret here would have covered you from this whole area, so getting it done with 2 turrets instead of 3. And this turret is actually reducing your mining efficiency. You're over-producing workers on your natural, and you don't have a 3rd command center, which is okay. I mean, you're delaying your 3rd in order to get map control, but by delaying your 3rd in order to get map control, you have to prevent him from taking his 3rd, and pretty soon his 4th, right? So one thing you should just always do in TVT is leave 1 Marine by himself sitting at your opponent's 3rd. And if he kills that Marine, you take your whole army and walk over to his 3rd and then leave a Marine there and walk away, Because you don't want him to get his third. If you haven't built a CC yet, you know that you have a bigger army than him. There's no way he can have a bigger army than you if you're going for this kind of army-based play where your third is really late. So you just gave him an advantage for no reason. These 2 medevacs should be with your dudes. This fight is good. You walked straight to his third as soon as your first 2 medevacs came out. But I want, again, I want you to rally your stuff to your army. Like, these 2 medevacs would have caught up to your army before the fight, and they should have been part of this. Anyway, so you do a lot of damage here. You get a really big lead. These guys are taking more splash to the tanks than they need to, but you can see you did more damage than him. If you'd had your army rallied over to I mean, your reinforcements rallied to your army, then you might have done a little bit better, but maybe not too much better. I feel like the army you had there was capable of preventing his third, and it was just because you didn't really reinforce properly and spread your army out properly that it didn't work out. Because if you look at this is 20. You got a pretty big lead, and you've got 1-1 finished against his 1-1, and he's got only a single tank, and so this tank is gonna get pretty big splashes. Like, that hit like 8 guys, that hit like 4 guys. Those Marines that you just moved forward, never move forward against a heavy Marine composition, right? Because the idea of little mini splits in this kind of scenario is that you want to create more surface area, right? And so by taking a couple of dudes and moving them forward, you are successfully creating some more surface area, but you're also allowing any Marines that he has that are too far back so they can't shoot. If you move forward, they get to shoot. So you're increasing his DPS without really increasing yours. So you're helping him. So whenever you want to create more surface area, it's better to move to the side. You move them like up here instead of moving them forward. So you move forward again, and then now you have to pull back. So this tank got 6 kills, but I mean, it probably damaged about 15 guys, and that didn't need to happen. And that's just a matter of creating a bunch of surface area and then splitting your dudes up, and just how you engaged. But also the reinforcements weren't coming all the way across the field. I'm wondering if maybe these Raxes were idle while you were pushing across the field too, because it feels like you should have had a lot more reinforcements. Oops. So yeah, these Raxes were idle for a long time. You created a big army, decided you want to walk across the field, and then your money is starting to pile up, and you're not really spending it until after the fight. So yeah. But none of that is really that big of a deal. You're doing okay in this early stage. What I really want to impress on you is that once he's landed the CC, it's a lot harder to pull it away from him than it is to just prevent him from feeling safe enough to land it in the first place. And also, he has total map vision, or I mean, not total, but he has a lot of map vision, and you don't. The play here is you're trying to have an army that's stronger than his and then own the map. And if you don't, he does. So whoever expands first basically gives up map control, so you really got to punish him for that. Anyway, it's not a big deal because he also lets you expand when you want to. And you move your army over here where your third is, and he walks his army over here, and you hold off this fight. So this fight, again, goes decently for you. And you have really perfect timing on this. Like, he unsieges, and then immediately you walk in and kill all of his stuff, so that was great. Now, so both of those fights went well for you. You're pretty far ahead on damage done. You're a little bit ahead on mining. You're way ahead on actual worker count. But what you're doing now, right? You want to fight, and so you went to counterattack, but you weren't really making troops during the fight. And this is both of the fights so far. Like, as you fight, you stop using your base, I think. Dun, 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 dun. So if we're watching the mini-map, the fight started right now, and every building you have is idle, right? So the fight's still going now, it's still going now. You're winning, you're doing great things micro-wise in the fight. Now the fight is over, and now you queue up a bunch of stuff. So during that fight, you piled up probably $3,000. And this has been a pretty consistent problem of yours since we first started together. And you had more important problems, like you weren't getting enough money. So we decided to just mention this problem but not focus on it. But I think now you've really gotten some good builds and you've learned to make a big army. And so now it's time to focus on not letting your macros slip every time you fight. So, and that just takes kind of a conscious effort to remind yourself that reinforcements are what win fights, right? So it is more important to make sure you're making new troops than it is to start the engagement. Like, let him siege up and take 2 siege shots at your CC. That's not going to do anything compared to what you can do in that amount of time by just queuing up some Marines back home. So obviously this is a huge problem, and you didn't need to make this mistake. Whenever you're considering being aggressive in any way, you got to ask yourself, is this the biggest army that I can possibly have at this moment? Has every penny that I've mined up to this point been spent on my army? And if you just had 3k in the bank, and so now you queued up 2 tanks at every factory and a bunch of Marines at every racks and all this stuff, then the answer is clearly no, right? I mean, if you build up a bank and then you're like, oh, I better spend that bank, now you want to do nothing until the bank is spent. So 2 or 3 waves of Marines and suddenly your money will be low again, and that's great. And that's when you want to fight. So at the end of this last fight, it is always theoretically a great time to counterattack when you just wiped out his whole standing army. You should have a bigger army than him. But because you weren't reinforcing, you don't. You don't have a bigger army than him after you win the fight. And that's just because your macro slipped. So right now he actually has a bigger army than you, and you're gonna spend your money and you're gonna get back to having a bigger army than him at about 17.5 minutes, because that's how long it's going to take for these multiple tanks and Marines to come out. So now is when you want to take all of these guys that are actually still in your base with that other army and go attack him. So you shouldn't have gone at that point. You should have known that you were weak just by the fact that you had 3k in the bank unspent. I mean, anytime you have 3k unspent, you're probably pretty weak compared to what you should be. And then, I mean, even if we assume that, okay, fine, I made that one mistake, were there any other mistakes? Yes. When you come over here to attack him, you scan ahead, right? And you see, okay, he's got a ton of Marines right there, and a ton more Marines. Okay, there's no way I'm going to win this fight. And so, like, at this moment, you know there's no way you're going to win this fight. And you're right here next to a choke point. Choke points are no fly zones. They're like, you can't go through them quickly. So you could have just retreated down to the bottom of this choke point and stood there, and he could not have chased you. And that's the advantage of being an infantry player versus somebody with a lot of tanks, is that he can't win the fight without the tanks there. So if you just walk down to the bottom of the ramp and stand still, then he's not going to come through that ramp at you. He's not going to go through that choke to get to you. So instead, you decide to go and suicide your whole army and not kill a single thing, which is obviously a silly decision. On top of the fact that you had this beautiful retreat point right here that you didn't use, even if, assuming that, okay, we're all the way up here and now we know that we're not going to retreat, get the medevacs out. They're really expensive. This is like $2,000 of medevacs. And you can easily just float them over this island where nobody can hit them and then run away from there. This infantry is not very expensive. This is like $500, $600 of infantry. No big deal if you lose all that. But keep the medevacs alive, man. It's like you got twice as much money in medevacs as you did in infantry, and you killed them for no reason. Also, you should probably never be off fighting with 10 medevacs and 10 Marines. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So just yet another indication that you should have waited for reinforcements before that. So even after this fight that was a big mistake, you got so much bigger of an income than him that you, after a couple waves more of army, you end up with plenty big enough army. Now right here, this is a big mistake. So it's 18 minutes in, and you have a big economic lead, you have a bunch of money, you feel like you can't spend it, and your income is super high, and you feel like you need more racks to be able to spend that money. But think about the actual situation you're in. Around 14 to 15 minutes in every game you ever play, you should theoretically be starting to mine out your main. So right now, you're on 3 bases, but around 18 minutes, you got to start to assume that your main's not going to be mining anymore, and around 20 minutes, your natural's not going to be mining anymore. So you're basically on 0 bases, or 1 base. You're on this base only. So if you pile up a bunch of money, but you're still on 1 base, don't throw down more buildings, man. Because it's a limited income, you know. You have a hump to get past, but you're easily going to get past it because your income is no longer increasing. So these buildings were a mistake. Also, the fact that you know you're about to lose these bases is why you need to have secured a 5th base by like 22 minutes. So you didn't even secure a 4th, and let alone a 5th, and you're not building another command center, you're not preparing to secure a 5th, and you're sieging up in this defensive position, and then again, like, awesome, he unsieges, you run up there, you get this great attack, and you win this fight really convincingly, and he runs away, and you're like, yeah, I crushed you again. But when you win a fight, you gain map control, and map control doesn't mean you have to go into his base and fight him to the death. Map control means you take both watchtowers and you move every single siege tank and every single marine you have up to a contained position. So either right here or right here. You move it up to a position where if he doesn't constantly defend your army in that position, he loses the game, right? So say you have your whole army right here, and he sieges up 5 tanks right here, and then takes the rest of his army and walks around and goes to attack your base. Well, he might think that means he's safe, but once these rocks are down, 5 tanks against your entire army, you're still going to be in a base trade situation. So just by having your army here, there's nothing he can really do to allow him to get his whole army out to go kill you without also dying, you know, base trade. So base trade, it's like the mutually assured destruction thing. You gotta say, look, you can't do anything bigger than a single or double medevac drop to me, because my army is right here, and if you take more than 600 or 1200 bucks of your army and do something else with it, I'm gonna kill you. And that's how you defend more bases. That's how you take this base and this base without him killing them. Because right now you have no map vision, and there's a good reason you have no map vision. All of your tanks are back here, so if you tried to get map vision, he'd just take it back from you because your army isn't there to back it up. But if you're sieged up just outside of his base, you're going to get these towers, you're going to have total map vision, and you're going to be able to secure multiple bases, and he's not going to be able to stop it because your whole army is in a position to counterattack if he does try to get anything done. I think it's a little obvious. You should have transferred workers a lot sooner than you did. But this, again, you win a fight, and during the fight you're not reinforcing, and then as soon as the fight ends, you realize you need to reinforce, so you queue up a bunch of army, and then you push out with your army before the reinforcements finish building. So you take this tiny fraction of your existing army, and you walk across the field with it, and he kills it. I mean, you walked past both watchtowers, which you know he has, with this little tiny force, and of course he's going to kill it. Why would you do that? Never go anywhere with less than all of your army. You should take your entire army and go places with it. With the exception of, you know, single medevac drops or just sending one marine off to get scouting information. So right now you have his theoretical, like, fog of war surface area against you is this plus this plus this plus this. So he's got 5 angles at which he could theoretically attack, and that means there is no way you can position your army successfully, because if you position it really strongly in one of those places, it'll hit one of the other 4, and if you try to cover 2, then not only are both of those only half strength, and possibly you could lose one of those to his whole army, but there's still 3 that are completely undefended. So actually, I guess whatever. Point is, you should never be defending in TVT. The person who is defending is at a major disadvantage. You should always try to get across the field and set up a siege position somewhere really close to him. On this map, it's right here or right here or right here. And that just allows you to know when he's leaving his base, man. Because right now his army is about to kill your base, and you don't even know about it. And why would you? And your army is so far away from there that there's no possibility of your defending. So, like, look at the contrast, right? So, if we look at what you have right here, you got no sign of anything that's going to happen. So, if he wants this base dead, he gets to kill it. Now, look at from his perspective. You can't just suddenly show up and kill this base because he has this watchtower. So if you were coming to kill that base, he'd see it in plenty of time. Plus his reinforcements are rallied right here, so he could easily defend this base, right? This base is a little less protected. He doesn't have vision of here, so you could at any time kill this base and he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. But he's protecting against that by having his army down in this position. So it's all about, in TVT, I mean, in TVP and TVZ it's not so much about this, but in TVT it's all about having your army positioned to counterattack and being willing to base trade and, you know, get that position. Because you need to be able to, like, Terran can do so much damage in so little time that you just can't allow him to get his army somewhere, kill a base, and then walk away, because that's just so much damage that he can do and then just immediately walk away. So again, you win a fight pretty heftily. You squish his face, but now you're completely not mining. You got this one base income that's not even fully saturated, and then you got hundreds of thousands of workers spread out in other various places where you don't really need them. And you're gonna kind of starve to death, I assume. I didn't watch the end of the game, but it seems pretty likely. So you macroed better than him, you got more money than him, you spent more money than him, you won all the fights, you microed really well, you did a lot of good things in this game. But your biggest problem was just map vision, map control, and army positioning. You never really did the classic Terran TVT thing, which is to contain your opponent. You never walked over to his base with your army. And when you did, you attacked and then immediately retreated, the same way that he keeps doing. It's so silly. Both of you are just attacking and then retreating. You never want to attack or retreat. You contain. You siege up near someone's base, and that allows you to expand and prevents him from expanding and creates a winning situation. And that's why so many TVTs, once both sides have 6 siege tanks, go into these really long games that are boring to play and boring to watch, is because that is the most powerful position you can get in TVT, is the boring one. So do it. Anyway.